Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joe, he's Nick, and you are listening to The Nick and Joe Show, coming to you from the Think Radio Broadcast Center, the world-famous Think Radio Broadcast Center, located in Canada's national capital. And I'm still Joe, and he's still Nick. Are you there, Nick?
Last I checked.
Nick is on the farm again tonight, but, you know, like we've said last week, we've got this brand new program that we're using, and for connecting the two of us. You know, I don't want to disparage Skype or Microsoft or any of that stuff. And just for your listeners out there, when you hear that banging away, that's Nick. Nick is typing on his laptop.
I'm trying to be gentle.
He believes in punching keys. You've heard the saying, punching keys?
That's what you do when you type.
I learned touch typing myself. But yeah, and really, it's actually quite interesting, Nick, because you see, as you said last week, I think it was, you took typing in school. And
I did.
I might have taken typing in high school too, except that I would never have been allowed to play rugby if I was in the typing class, okay? So that would have been a deal breaker for my teammates, having a teammate on the rugby team that took typing in high school. But I'm not disparaging you, Nick. I just want to make that perfectly clear. All I'm saying is I taught myself typing from a record, an LP, you know, a vinyl record. And the name of the record was Teach Yourself How to Touch Type. And so I'd play that record, and I had an old, you know, 1940s, 1950s Royal 550, which was a big mother of a typewriter, I'm telling you. That thing must have weighed about 30 pounds. And so I taught myself how to type. Now, of course, I didn't touch type because you couldn't touch type on those things. Touch typing only started later on when they had electric typewriters. Then you could touch without hitting the key. And the same thing with computers. Anyway, this is a complete digression. I don't know why I'm onto this subject, Nick, but
Free association, buddy.
Free association. Anyway, so quick housekeeping. Anyone who wants to join in the live chat for the live broadcast, click on the chat bubble. If you have to register or log in, you will have to do one or the other. And that's just to make sure that you're a real, live human being, flesh and blood, that you are not a robot. Although you might be one of those cyborgs on what's the show? Come on, help me out. Battlestar Galactica. Battlestar Galactica.
Oh,
the skin jobs, man. The
Cylons.
The Cylons.
Oh, you're talking about the Cylons.
Oh, I said cyborg, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
I meant Cylons.
Borgs come from Star Trek.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, I meant Cylons, guys. I meant Cylons.
Yeah, and that was the latest version of Battlestar Galactica. Was incredible. If all you cared about was in-space flight physics, it was worth watching just for that. It was really well done. I'm actually
in the middle of rewatching the series on Amazon Prime, and it is an interesting series, and it's captivating. And so anyway, I'm in the middle of watching. I heard that they were doing some other remake on it. I'm not really sure if I heard that.
Continue. I don't know how they could continue the story, but who knows?
I don't think they could continue the story. I think that they'd have to remake the story, which of course they did with the series we're talking about, which was so much better than the original series. Anyway.
Well, the original series was so bad it was good.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It was 1980s, right? 1970s, late 70s.
Yeah,
so
late 1970s, early 80s, I think.
So, the quality of the show was, that time frame.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. Anyway, you guys out there are listening to us, and you don't really care about this. I could tell because nobody's in the chat room giving us immense feedback. And what does it have to do with current events? This, of course, has to do with our free association, but people don't really listen to us, Nick, because of our free association. They might, get the odd piece of trivia that they really didn't need to know, and it's not going to enhance their lives anyway, but there it is. So, look, there are lots of things to talk about this week, Nick, and we were talking about this in their pre-show production meeting, and one of the topics that's really, I find, very intriguing, and we touched base about it a couple of days ago, and this whole question about ethics commissioners, and the story originated, not the story, but the topic in our minds, the discussion between the two of us, originated in the finding by the ethics commissioner in Ottawa. That's where Think Radio is situated, our broadcast center. Anyway, so in Ottawa, the ethics commissioner for the city of Ottawa found one of the city councillors guilty of a quote-unquote ethics violation because he allegedly made some remarks to some interns or female staff of a sexual nature. There was subsexual innuendo. And just to be clear, I'm not even going to name the counselor because I think he was treated grossly unfairly. And I'm even going to go so far as to say that the whole process was badly tainted by the simple fact that the ethics commissioner never met with this particular counselor, never interviewed him, never discussed anything, never gave him a chance to present a rebuttal to the accusations and that were leveled against him, and nevertheless found him guilty with, in fact, no corroborating evidence, just basically on the say-so of a few women that had made, young ladies that made some accusations. And it was funny because the accusations that were made literally years and years, and in some cases, I suspect even decades after the fact. And I will say one counselor in Ottawa I will name, and I know, again, you guys are more interested in bigger stories, national, international stories, but there is one counselor I'm going to name, Scott Moffat. Scott Moffat was tweeting, I think, really recklessly and wrongly about the countless, was the word he used in his tweets, countless women coming forward and making these accusations. And, I actually replied to him. I generally don't get involved in these Twitter wars. I tweet from time to time something's interesting, or sometimes I can't resist. And in this case, Nick, I couldn't resist. And I asked him, what do you mean countless? Like, put a number on countless, okay? Countless is I can't count. Well, I don't know. Were there 3 accusations, Scott, and you can't count to 3? That would qualify in your case as countless. But in my case, countless is a pretty big number. So, it really added to the whole air of incredulity, if you will, about the accusation. So that's sort of the background to how we got into this discussion about, do we even need an ethics commissioner or ethics commissioners to monitor the behavior of politicians, of our elected officials, Nick?
Well, I've come to the conclusion, especially in the last few days, because I was right in the middle of that Twitter war, defending someone I think was unjustly persecuted, and I won't go into why because it's neither here nor there, but I know the individual, at least on a casual basis. I know people who worked for him, and I couldn't understand how anyone would ever think that the individual in question here, who was being slandered, in my mind, slandered and attacked unfairly by other members of the City Council of Ottawa, that anyone could come to these conclusions. So I rose to his defense. And so I got in the middle of all that. And after all that, the conclusion I've come to is that the ethics commissioners, as they are employed now in our civil governments, are just a fancy job to pay somebody 6 figures a year. And that it sounds good, it looks good, it must be good. Well, it's not. Because, as I pointed out during the Twitter war, the only ethics commissioner you need is one sentence, and that is, remember the golden rule. treat others as you would have them treat yourself. That's the only ethics you need to worry about. I mean, you don't even have to get into any kind of religious. You could put the 10 Commandments up and live by those. Yes, that's great. But you don't even have to go that far. Just remember, treat people as you want to be treated. And that solves the whole point. The other question that this thing raises is what kind of counselors or people in high office, and I'm broadening this out because there's more ethics counselors out there than just in the city of Ottawa and at different levels of government. So when you're talking about politicians in general, what kind of people are we electing? That we need to have somebody whose job it is to make sure that they conduct themselves in a reputable and dignified and there's another word I'm looking for, in an ethical manner. Like, we're not talking about stealing cookies from a cookie jar here. We're talking about the destruction of a man's livelihood. We're talking about slandering somebody unjustly, in my mind, over something that, that probably didn't happen, but they're willing to destroy this guy. And for what?
And not
so
just...
why are we electing people who want to do that we now have to have them appoint somebody to watch over them so they don't do it?
And not only,
I don't get it.
Not only destroying the individual who is the subject of the scrutiny and the investigation, but destroying his family, putting his family, his wife and his children, and putting them through the public ringer, as it were, and tainting their reputations as a result of this. Nobody deserves this. Children do not need to have their parents attacked in this fashion. And I agree with you, Nick. There are a couple of levels of this that I really am troubled by. First of all, I have to say this, okay? And this was one of the tweets that I sent out there. That is, I recall a few years ago that there was a movement. No, it's more than a few years ago now. Boy, time is flying. I was just going to say it was sort of in the aftermath of the WorldCom. I don't know if you remember the WorldCom. The .com companies collapse, and the idea that these companies, the executives of these companies, had made millions of dollars or siphoned off millions of dollars from their companies, which then, had to declare bankruptcy, and investors lost money and customers lost money, et cetera, et cetera. And in the aftermath of that wide sort of scandal, there was a real push to include in business courses for students in university who were getting a business degree of one form or another, to include in the course curriculum a course that they had to pass on business ethics. And at that time, I thought that was a very, very odd thing to talk about instituting in a university, at a university level, because by the time these guys are in university, you would think that they already had their character shaped and that they didn't have to actually take a course in business ethics or in ethics. And it implies that the character of the individuals in question somehow or other is flawed. And it may indeed be flawed, but isn't that more a reflection of their upbringing than some gap in their university education? That was my feeling. The second thing related to that, just to finish the thought, and